one more minute before we start going, just in case any stragglers show up. But in the interim, my name is Ursula, for those who I have not chatted with before. I am with Mies, and we also, of course, have Sarah here, who's going to be our main event of the day. Hello. Okay, so if y'all want to, in the interim, just like in the chat, you want to tell us where you're located, maybe what your role is. I always like to see the different types of people that come onto different calls. I'm representing Team Baker over here, so whenever there's pastry peeps, I'm excited. I'm the only one in the company, so it makes me really excited.
We have one other pastry person.
We have one other. We have one other, and
She's
then
not a baker though.
Yeah. See, oh, you have a pastry chef. See,
Nice.
I always distinguish. I am a baker, not a pastry chef. I am terrible at plating, so that is not my vibe. But I respect pastry chefs.
I always just say I'm a chef, like because I'm not a pastry chef, I'm not a baker. I'm just a chef, right? Like,
yeah, just food stuff.
Just food stuff. Yeah.
Food stuff.
Nice. Kapow. Welcome. Right, okay.
Person. Manhattan. I'm in Brooklyn. That's so fun. I was in Manhattan the other day. I always thought that I would never go into Manhattan when I lived in Brooklyn, but I'm there once a week.
Oh, hey.
All right, we got Calgary in the house. Cool. Got someone else joining. Looks like there's still some people trickling in, so we'll still wait another minute. But
okay.
See, yeah. Sarah, what's the weather like up there today?
It's everything. It's everything you've ever seen. So I'm in Syracuse, New York, and right now it's sunny. But about 10 minutes ago it was snowing, and then before that it was hailing, and then it was sunny, and it's everything today.
You're like describing what living in Chicago felt like for 7 years.
It does feel very similar to Chicago weather. Less wind, maybe more rain, but that's what we get.
You can't tell Chicago what it is or isn't.
No, it doesn't sound it.
It's everything else. 80 degrees and then snow. There you go. This is why I'm
feeling that.
in New York City now. It's been so much more chill.
Yeah.
But I do miss the Midwest, I will say. I specifically miss Milwaukee more than I miss Chicago, but neither here nor there. Because it's great. It's a great town.
Yeah.
There's beer and cheese curds everywhere. It's amazing.
I was gonna say, is it food related? This is food related, right? It's gotta be. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like, we're 4 minutes in. We have a decent amount of people in here. Fried cheese curds. That's what I'm saying. If you go to Miller Park, they also have great like little shuttles that you can take your beer with on to get there. I digress though. Anyways, hi everyone. Again, my name is Ursula. I am with the Mies team. I'm going to be kind of like hosting these sales calls that we're doing, just going over different like things that come up in kitchens and how to troubleshoot them. So we have as our featured distinguished guest today, Sarah. Sarah is also, of course, with the Mies team, our head of customer success and support, an industry vet in her own right, a pretty badass one at that. I won't say more because I don't want her to hide under the table. If I
will. Thank you so much.
But we are here today just to kind of like pick at Sarah's brain more and learn more about different methods of having better, culture in the kitchen and better systems in place. And I'll let Sarah kind of take it from here.
Yeah. For me, like effective kitchen management comes down to a good leader, right? What that means, that's subjective. But to me, a good leader is somebody who wants to improve the quality of life for their whole team, right? We want to have a system that works so that it's better for the chef, it's better for the cooks, better for the front of the house, all the way down to the dishwasher, just everybody that we can touch with that system. That's the idea, right? And in any restaurant situation, that system is typically your chef's brain, right? Like all of the information is held up there, every technique, every plating style, all of the prep methods, and then how we want the servers to talk about this food, what's important about this food, all of that stuff is kept in your chef's brain. And Mies to me is the place to put all that stuff. If there could be an external chef brain that your team could access at any point in time, it would be Mies if you build it, right? So if there was a way for, if a front of house team, if a server comes up and is like, I don't know what the allergens are, is this dish gluten-free? If they had somebody to ask that wasn't you every time, if they could go into Mies, pull up the plate recipe and see, oh, this is tagged gluten-free, I'm safe. I know this is a trusted system that my chef helped to build. All of our information is in there. You're good to go, right? That's giving that server autonomy on the floor and more power, but it's also backed by your own knowledge. And the same happens in the back of the house. When when cooks are constantly asking you how to do something for the second or third time. I don't know about you, Ursula, but like, as a chef, my biggest pet peeve was repeating myself, which is something I felt like I was asked to do all of the time. And my cooks knew that like more than twice, she's going to lose it. Not intentionally, but like you just don't want to be asked the same question over and over. You want to know that they're paying attention. Did you write it down? Do you have a notebook? What if they didn't need to, right? Like, what if there was a place for them to go to find that information? Again, could that exist in Mies? Yes, if you build it for them, right? Rather than them writing down whatever variation of a recipe they heard, you can control the recipe that they use in Mies, which is just beautiful and creates.
You want to like maybe pull up a recipe and we can sort of go over where those little tips and tricks can live, because I think that I'm actually curious even to know like who in the chat is a current Mies customer or somebody that's in trial or just finding out about us, because I definitely agree with you, Sarah, that like there's this big disconnect that can happen when you are training someone, because maybe they're greener in the kitchen or as a server, and they're too busy worrying if they're retaining to actually retain information.
Yes.
And then they're afraid that you'll think they didn't listen. And so they don't want to ask again. So having another place that they can reference on their own terms and really just like decide, oh, this recipe, I can do this. This is mine now. Is such a huge help.
No, I totally agree. And it's interesting that you use the word afraid and fear both in there, right? So like just by our very nature, we're increasing their anxiety just by our own personalities. At the same time, like that fear or that anxiety comes from a place of like, they care, they want to do a good job. Otherwise they wouldn't be like looking to ask you again. They would just do whatever. So those questions are the sign of a cook who cares. And that's invaluable, right? But here is a way for you to hit that happy medium where they have, maybe you've shown them once, they've done it once, and now they have this as a reference for the next time. So this is a quick little hummus recipe that we have. And it's got, your basics over here, your ingredients. We have the prep method kind of detailed out. And that's sort of Mies standard, right? Like we know that, let's say this cook comes in and chef, we only have 12 ounces of tahini today. We know that if they put that in there as a viewer, that to say that, we know how much we can make. So I can only make 3 quarts and 1 3/4 cup today instead of 4 quarts. It's probably going to be okay. Not the end of the world, but we can still get there for this day, right? So that's kind of Mies standard. Where I like to take it, or where I would have used this in my last kitchen, is to add in a little workflow, right? So down here, Mies Webinars is me. That's my chef name. Here I assigned Mitchell 1 times batch, please, for this week. And that's timestamped. So he can see that when he comes in, sees that hummus is on his prep list. If he scrolls to the bottom in the comments section, he can see he's been assigned to make 1 batch for this week. He wrote back, chef, I put this in the walk-in on the top shelf to the left. Well, thank goodness you said that, Mitchell, because now Day Day is looking for this hummus and he doesn't have to ask me. He can, if he can't find it in the walk-in, which probably just needs to open his eyes, most likely. But if he can't find it in the walk-in, he's going to come downstairs and look at the tablet and check instead of asking me, or again, just putting your chef's brain into another spot. And this allows you to delegate more, right? That's the second most important feature of a good leader, is someone who knows how to delegate. So this is one way to maybe assign prep, or like communicate with your team and use this comment section as a communication tool, because it stays there and it's timestamped. So when Mitchell made the hummus. There's another way we put in here is we added a tag. So this technically says tools. I'm a hacker. What can I say? I like to use this section as tags. And if I wanted to assign this if I wanted to search for prep for the week of 4/24, by adding this here, when I go back into recipes, for example, if I click on show filter, go to tools, also known as tags in my world, and I click week of 4/24, I can see what I've put on the prep list by tagging those recipes. I've created a prep list here that my cooks can go through. That's one way of utilizing a prep list here. Another way, if you don't mind me getting a little bit more fancy here, we're going to remove that filter. Another way is to potentially build just a recipe book. So in our recipe book section, we just added our recipes here. And again, we're communicating via the comments in that way. So like, that's how I'm assigning the amount. It's just a one-time batch. And then the extra advanced level, if you want to get really fancy, let's say you're doing a graduation party or something, and you really want to lay this out well, is to create a doc, right? It's super simple to come in here and create a table. I want a 3x3, okay, set, and then assign your recipes, how much, who's doing it. You could build this out to, this is the par, this is the day, this is whatever additional information you want in here. And then when the cooks come in, they can just say, oh, okay, Mitchell's got hummus, and we're back into the hummus recipe. So several different ways to do this. There's actually one more. I promise I'm almost done. The last way that you could maybe make a prep list out of this is to create what I like to call a super recipe, right? So if Mitchell's coming in on yesterday, he knows he's got to make these things in these quantities, because as the chef, I went in and added sub recipes to these. So let's say we want to assign him chicken stock. So I'm adding that and then saying I want 2 quarts. And I'm going to click that to make sure that it pulled my sub recipe. Yes, it did. Done. And now Mitchell's making this prep list. And so he could comment here. He could comment on the recipes themselves as to like locations if you wanted. But anyway, some examples of how you might get fancy with using this for management.
And Sarah, this is all obviously very pertaining to back of house stuff, but I mean,
Totally.
Let's also talk about, like, we definitely have a GM in the chat right now. Like, how does this apply for maybe front of house training, for maybe cocktail programs?
Totally. So there's 2 really handy things for front of the house stuff. So as a chef, when I was doing, so I used to write the menu. In this last restaurant I was in, we changed the menu every 6 weeks. So I would write the menu, I would start to write the recipes. As soon as I was done writing the recipes, somewhere around like 90 every 6 weeks. So it was a ton of recipe writing. Once the recipes were done, I would then transition to writing the server guide, right? And that's where I was detailing out, okay, this is the dish, this is the farmer that we got it from, this is why this is important, here are the allergens that are listed in it, all of that stuff that I wanted the server to know. Not necessarily that the chicken was named Joe, but like pull that back 1 degree. And that's where I was. So where you could put that information is in the notes section here. And again, you could write this in whatever, like, let's just say we wanted to write server notes. And we want to make it bold and beautiful. Maybe not red, because that's just a scary color. But anyway, so if we are adding in our server notes, this recipe took 12 years to develop. As we're adding in those notes, when they bring this up, like, so if you were on the front of the house and you wanted to, what was that thing that chef wanted me to remember about the hummus? Why is it special? This is probably not the special note, but just on the fly, they could bring up the recipe and see that here. They could also, if I wanted to get, again, fancy, I could tag this myself as a vegan and gluten-free recipe here in this. Again, it says tools. I'm going to use it as tags section. Only gluten-free if prompted. Do not serve with bread. Okay. So now I've got server stuff in here. Now they can see, okay, vegan and gluten-free. Let's say a customer comes in and they want to know what is safe for a gluten-free person. Your viewer could go in here, your server could go in here, click filter on recipes, and bring up everything that is tagged with gluten-free if you've taken the time to go in and tag that, right? That's just communicating that now to the front of the house. And now they feel safe without asking you, in the middle of service, chef, which ones can you highlight these? You know, I'm sure that most of us have this menu already built out, but it's just one way to verify. Maybe there's an odd set of allergies. I used to have a customer who came in who was salt free. And there were very specific things that she could have and not have. And so we had her name was Maya. We had a Maya safe menu items because she was such a regular that we would tag things in, at the time we were using Evernote, but we would tag things in Evernote to say, these are safe for Maya, so that servers never had to ask. There was already a custom menu built for her.
Yeah. And I think that there's such an important aspect about extending that autonomy of menu knowledge to the front of house and just as much as it is for back of house, because
Absolutely.
while there is this whole, I mean, you know, there's like the whole issue of training right now. It's like people call in sick sometimes, or you want to have to step away and you're getting texts at 2 o'clock in the morning, like, hey, I can't find the so-and-so. And while that's an issue for back of house, where it comes with front of house is that disconnect that you can often feel between kitchen and front of house staff.
Yes.
And being able to give that kind of menu access to the front of house is, I think, just as important. They're the ones that obviously have to sell it to the guests, but also just so that they have a better sense of the menu themselves without having to go ask the kitchen again in the weeds.
Yes.
I've done my fair share of, you should know this, get out of here,
Yes.
kind of question answers, and
Yes.
obviously not helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful. But I'm also guilty of that. And I started in front of the house. My parents owned restaurants. I was serving tables at 8 years old. Not smart. Don't do that. I don't think it's legal anymore. Anyway, so I totally understand. Like I can remember the kitchen that I was working in as a chef, where the servers pulled me aside and said, like, you've been in our shoes and yet you're the least helpful, right? Like when the weeds happen, you should be the one that gets us through. And I was 24 years old, and I will never forget that, because it totally changed my perspective on the importance of being service driven as a chef, right? And never forgetting what it's like to be out there on the front lines with the customers. So this, if anything that you can do, again, to add that feeling of safety, of security, of knowledge, of one team, that's delegation, that's improving quality of life. All of that can happen with this program. It really just depends on what you put in.
We love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So there are some other pieces that have more to do with controlling recipe costs and the back office aspect of that, because that's also something we're responsible for as chefs, and just, you know, making sure that we have a restaurant to run the next week when everyone shows up. I know I have a couple of these costed, and I believe this is one of them. So costs in Mies happen at an ingredient level. So you can see, this is actually good because we have an error in there. But so you can see at an ingredient level, when we have costs attached to everything, we can pull how many servings and then our total cost, our cost per serving. We've got a fancy calculator down here that won't go all the way through because I don't have a sell price listed in there. Let's see. I don't know, $13 for soup these days. I'm not sure. Okay, it's a little, actually it should be. Okay, I feel better about that. And maybe I don't care, but maybe I'm making decisions based on these numbers. Maybe I have a food cost percentage that I need to hit, and I need to make sure that I'm there. This is one way to use that at a recipe level, and just control each individual plate that's coming out. We're pulling in the different sub recipes. We've got everything costed. Beef stock is always an interesting one to cost, because how do you account for the bones, right? That's always the question. Did you buy the bones? Did you get them just because you fabbed them off of a larger piece? Hopefully your water cost is zero. Maybe not though. We'll make it for a gallon. But yes. Anyway, I'm also happy to answer questions if we have any of those pertaining to kitchen management or using Mies, whether to control for costs or training your team, using it for workflows.
Yeah, holler with your questions. If you want to even throw it in there on an unmute, we love a conversation. Sarah and I talk to each other, not as much as we would like, but more than we talk to you guys. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Carrie mentioned, and this is an interesting thought. She said, I can go in and check what prep has or hasn't been done in Mies. And one way to do that is just to take a look at what the last time something was viewed, right? So if you see beef stock prep was just viewed a few seconds ago by one of your team, then hopefully they prepped it, maybe not. You could also build checkboxes into prep lists if you use the doc method. You can set that up so that they can then check that off or throw a line through it, etc. There's lots of ways to customize this side of things, including adding comments. Personally, I like the comment on the recipe idea, because then I know it's done, I know who did it, and I know what time they said it.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of communicating in the kitchen. And again, they can view it on a phone or on a tablet. They can look at it even before they've come in for the day when they're at home, so they know what kind of day lies ahead for them as well.
Totally. Yeah, if they're the anxious type. The other piece that I like to mention is when when you notice as a chef that like maybe your recipe, you wrote it in a hurry. Those sessions where I was writing 90 recipes at a shot, they weren't always the best recipe, right? I tried to put myself in the mindset of whichever one of my team was going to be probably primarily cooking that. Maybe you don't always have that kind of time. The great thing about Mies is you can also edit on your phone or whatever on the fly. So if I notice that like, hey, they should really have a towel underneath that mixing bowl when they're whisking, that would really help them to have more stability. I can say it to the cook. I can also snap a picture when he or she does that. And I can quickly add that picture to one of the prep steps so that the next time they bring that up, they're going to have this visual cue and I don't have to say anything. It's going to make them better cooks without me doing more and more work of development. It's like I developed you this one time and now you have this reference point. Give them what they want and then also give them somewhere to get it the next time. That's not you.
Any kind of insights or thoughts from anybody in the chat? Maybe how this can apply to your operation, or, you know, we love to always trade the ward stories too. So, I mean, there's a lot of really common things that I think Sarah has been bringing up today that I think people struggle with in day-to-day operations, that we love to help streamline and we love to help by promoting communication, which all leads to a healthier and more stable work environment. So the ways in which Mies can do that are, you know, varied. So love to troubleshoot stuff whenever with people, and just, you know, hear from you just as much as we like to talk at you.
For sure. Yes.
Well, it seems like we got a quiet bunch here.
Which is totally cool. So I'm going to take this time to plug the next webinar series that's starting from customer success. So yesterday, we launched a series that's basically about using Mies for training in your kitchens. And we are running a prep cook boot camp next, starting May 8th. It's at 2:30. And that will be basically about getting your cooks into Mies and using it, right? Like from 0 to 1. Let's say they've never logged into a website before. We are going to get them into Mies, into set up in your account and running, right? Not just in Mies, but like, okay, let's talk about how to organize your day. You've got this prep list. What do you do first? What are the next steps? What's passive prep versus active prep? What's going to need your attention? And just sharing the industry knowledge that we've harbored over these years. And also how Mies could make that easier. Like a freshly sharpened knife, you know, like you could do it with a dull knife, but you know, it's going to be better if you've got Mies right there to be that really sharp knife to get through that day. So that starts May 8th. It is a webinar series that is for cooks at any level to come in and learn how to use Mies in their kitchen.
That sounds exciting.
It's going to be fun.
I started out as a customer before I started working here. And it's a really great tool to share with the whole team. And I think that's what makes it so special, is that it really is like intended to be used by every single person in your operation, and that it's easy enough and approachable enough for them to use. So really excited to peek in on that series, and hopefully some of you guys can make it as well.
Yes, love it. All right, well, this was super fun, except for mostly I just talked at everybody.
Yes, there will be recordings of the webinar series to the question in the chat. Sarah, where are those going to live?
So everything is on getmes.com/webinars. You can see all of our webinars, including the customer success ones, sales ones. There's lots of great stuff up there. One of my favorites that gets referenced time and time again is top 5 reasons your recipes aren't pulling a cost. So if you're having trouble with costing in particular, that's a really valuable one. Like 95% of the reasons, like when somebody brings us an issue, most of the time it's one of those 5. It's like, those are the big 5. Thank you, Liz, for linking that. That's where you can find all of our webinars, including this recording. And yeah. Thank you all so much. This was a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
You guys. All right. Well, I'll let everybody get back to their day, but thank you so much for stopping in. Hit us up with any questions you have. Go check out the recording after it's up. We are here to help. So thank you for giving us your time.
We have all the hacks. We're happy to share them. I love it. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.